Artificial intelligence is reshaping the job market, and for young people entering the workforce, the first step on the career ladder may be changing faster than ever. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Wednesday, July 22nd here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. From writing reports to coding software, AI is taking on many tasks once handled by entry-level workers. Now, this reality is raising new questions about how young people will launch their careers. For this, I have Thomas Maresca with American news agency UPI here in the studio. Thomas, welcome back.
Thanks. Great to be here.
I also have freelance journalist Chien-Hao from Taiwan with us. Chien-Hao, it's great to have you here.
Hello, long time no see. Glad to be back here.
Good to have you with us. Thomas, so quite a number of foreign media organizations that have covered about the impact of AI on employment. Let's start off with the latest one by the Financial Times. I actually was going to ask you about the Forbes one, but the most recent one is by the Financial Times. So is AI changing entry-level jobs more, or is it eliminating them altogether?
Yeah, so according to this article, and we're sort of seeing the article is citing research by hiring agencies and other sources. Basically, they're for now the conclusion is that we're seeing more of a change in the types of entry-level jobs rather than this process of eliminating them, which seemed to be happening the last couple of years. There was hiring was lower, and especially in kind of these entry-level jobs. And the idea, I guess, from employers was that, AI can handle this more like busy work type of stuff that new hires tend to do. But they're seeing, this Financial Times article cited, survey by this National Association of Colleges and Employers in the U.S. saying that new college graduate hiring from the class of 2026 is up 5.6%. And another study that was cited in this article said that it's actually heavy AI investors are even having a higher, boost in new employment that was up by over 10%, including entry-level hiring. And what seems to be happening is that, I think employers are realizing, okay, you can't just sort of plug in AI and it will just do everything by itself, and so there needs to be kind of human oversight and maybe some, more integration. And so that's kind of what's changing in the types of entry-level jobs. It sounds like, one person quoted in this article was saying that entry-level work is moving from grunt work to real work. They're, in a sense, these new hires are doing more kind of, more jobs that demand like what used to be more seasoned staff, something like data-driven decision-making, people management, these kinds of soft skills that seem to be what are being advertised. And they've noted that there's a big increase in just even what kind of skills are being advertised in job openings. And so, they're saying this sort of, human soft skills are what are more in demand, and that's like creativity, empathy, judgment, networking ability, and that's what, rather than sort of just straight up, code, I can code or I can do these sorts of things that, AI is good at, but then there's a whole, and it's still so kind of a new and also very rapidly evolving, technology and the way it's being applied. So this seems to be where it's landing at the moment for, these new job seekers to be sort of, those are the skills, these more human skills, and how can you bring that to the workplace and, figure out how best to integrate that with AI. I mean, at the same time, one of the challenges is that, for entry-level workers, how do you get those skills? I mean, if you're just kind of plugging in immediately, and, even these younger applicants and graduates, maybe they're much more used to using AI regularly, but at the same time, some of the ways you use AI can sort of stunt some of these other ways of growing. If your answers are just kind of being spit out by this machine, there's a sense of, you don't have to work through the step-by-step process, which leads to sort of more wisdom or judgment along the way. So I think just still so much we don't know, but that seems to be where things are landing at the moment.
Right, and this being said, Chien-Hao, what are pundits saying? I mean, do they say AI is creating new opportunities, or is it making it harder to land a first job? What have you been hearing?
Indeed, pundits have they are divided into on these issues. One side argues that AI is already having a real effect on employment opportunities for recent university graduates. Meanwhile, others say AI is certainly part of the picture, but the bigger factor are the economic slowdown and the cooling job market recently. And that said, both sides agree on one thing. They are concerned that about how AI will reshape employment in the years ahead. Traditionally, entry-level graduates have taken jobs like administrative work, customer service, or marketing, copywriting, or document editing. But with the rise of generative AI now, many of those tasks can now be handled by fewer people than before. And companies can often rely on experienced employees working alongside AI to achieve the same results, reducing the needs to hire as many new graduates. But meanwhile, AI is creating entirely new roles as well. Companies now need people to, for example, develop AI systems, manage AI products, design AI-powered workflows, and oversee AI governance. These are all positions that barely existed just a few years ago. In my view, AI is raising the bar for entry-level jobs, indeed, and making it more difficult for new graduates to break into the workforce. So in the future, not knowing how to use AI could become a major disadvantage. While being able to work effectively with AI will likely be considered a basic job skill. And that's why I believe high schools and universities now should move quickly to make AI literacy and practical AI skills part of the core curriculum in the future.
Right, for sure. Thomas, you touched upon this earlier as well, but what more that is? Can you tell us about the skills that matter most in an AI-driven workplace?
Right, so, I mean, Chien-Hao mentioned it briefly, but obviously sort of AI skills themselves and familiarity with AI is becoming, certainly almost a must. And, we can talk about that more later as well. But I think beyond that, it is this sense of, finding a new kind of way to use, again, these human skills or social skills. And so, it's kind of, in a sense, something like liberal arts degrees that, for a long time had that sense of not being really practical. It's better to learn how to code or something like that. Now there's, some graduates and employers are seeing that those are the kinds of things that can be useful or in demand. This almost like interdisciplinary ability and ways to, think and be creative in your solutions and use of tools rather than, I mean, obviously there's a need for hard science and coding and things like that, but I think there's, a lot more jobs that are open now that maybe once, would have been, kind of limited to people that could code or something, because now there is that element that AI can take care of that, but, what can you bring to the table? And actually in that Financial Times article we were talking about earlier, they were discussing with like a car design company where they were saying, they still want their new hires to use, to start their sketches like with a pencil, because even though AI can accelerate the process of coming up with a design, it does these, it has this effect of kind of, making shortcuts and kind of leaving you out of the stages and in high sort of pressure situations or things where the output is really important, that can be really dangerous if you don't know, how to really get from A to B to C. And, they were saying the example is, AI might create this engine model or something, but leave out something like a radiator vent, and you wouldn't notice it unless you were so familiar with the process. So I think, this same, or I'm not sure if it was the same hirer, but another company was saying, the one thing that they really look for is the thing that's hard to train for, which is talent. So there's that sense of, just having skills in the field you're going into. So I guess, underlying that is that, the technical know-how. I mean, obviously the AI familiarity is important, but in some ways, the really hard technical skills are being replaced to some extent with this demand for just this more like fluid skill set, and again, this kind of empathy and judgment, and how can you bring something human to the table and know enough to know where AI is going off, making a mistake or going in the wrong direction. And I mean, it can be hard to tell sometimes. I don't, just if you've ever generated something, it looks good at first glance, and then you're realizing, these mistakes. So, you need that experience. And again, that also does bring up the idea of, it's not easy to get to those skills from the start. And I think just generally in the AI, how AI is affecting the workplace, and the job marketplace in general. I think people talk about this kind of transition gap where, the roles that are disappearing now and the skills that are needed for the future, even if AI ends up not replacing jobs but creating new jobs, there is this kind of middle where, it's hard to sort of figure out exactly how to fit, overcome that gap. And again, there's so much is happening so fast.
Right, indeed. As you said, it's evolving very quickly. And against this backdrop then, Chien-Hao, are South Korea and Taiwan well positioned for the AI workforce, do you think? I mean, what have been some of the measures proposed by the governments here in Asia?
Let me take some time to explain it, to compare these two countries. Let's start with South Korea first. In the past, I've reported on AI startups that they are working with elementary schools and even civil groups across the country to help young people, the students, understand AI and to use it to solve real-world problems. And students, they are learning how to use AI to answer, for example, everyday questions, improving their foreign language skills, and even learn how to code with the help of AI. And because South Korea has already designated AI as a strategic national industry, the government has introduced a number of initiatives recently. And this year is rolling out AI digital textbooks in elementary and secondary schools, using AI to provide more personalized, customized learning experiences. And even in the universities level, institutions like Seoul National Universities or like KAIST and Post-Tech, they have dedicated programs to train AI researchers and specialists. And major companies in South Korea, for like Samsung, LG, and Naver, and Kakao, they are also partnering with universities to offer AI courses and internship programs with the goal of narrowing the gap between graduate skills and the industry needs. And interestingly, Taiwan's government announced a very similar initiative plan last month. It's a 4-year program called AI Talent Arc program aimed at helping both teachers and students in elementary schools and secondary schools become familiar with AI and learn how to use it effectively. The government also plans to develop teaching materials, ingredients, and expand AI teacher training. But based on my personal observations, Taiwan is still moving more slowly than South Korea when it comes to introducing AI education in schools. Taiwan has one of the world's strongest semiconductor industries, from chip design and to like manufacturing to advanced packaging and testing. The booming demand of AI chips has also been a major driver for the economy and the stock market, as we mentioned on the program before. But talent, or so-called like human resources, remains Taiwan's biggest challenge, because there's a shortage of professionals in areas such as large language models and AI system engineering, data engineering, and AI safety. And right now, the supply of AI talents or human resources simply isn't keeping up with the demand from either private or public sectors. And another challenge is Taiwan's industrial structure. As you know, like South Korea, where large chaebols, those big enterprises, often lead investment and innovations. But Taiwan, the economy is built around the small or middle-sized enterprises, like many we call SMEs, right? The SMEs have fewer financial resources and invest less on like research and development, which means that they are adopting AI more slowly, and closing that gap will be one of the Taiwan's biggest challenges going forward.
Right, I see. In the meantime, Thomas, do you suppose, is Asia better prepared than other regions for an AI-driven workforce? And what are your takeaways with regard to South Korea's efforts to ensure that advances in AI do not hinder employment opportunities?
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, it seems that Asia is kind of at the forefront already of bringing AI into the workplace, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, and certainly just Korea in particular and Taiwan as Chien-Hao mentioned, but Korea is obviously well lined up to sort of take advantage of it just from the industrial base and the semiconductor base here, and just the nature of the workforce and workplaces. But I think there's also one big difference. In Asia, generally speaking, is also its sort of a general attitude towards AI, and a more positive attitude towards it, or a more optimistic attitude towards it. And you see governments like Korea sort of making, really trying to plan around its implementation. And there was a study recently by Stanford University's Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Center that was just gauging public sentiment around the world towards AI. And in Asia, it's so much higher, like just both people responding that they feel optimistic about AI, but also about people trusting institutions and governments to help speed up the pace of AI adoption, but to also create sort of maybe guardrails or something around it. And that kind of, when you compare it to in the U.S., it's been going really in the other direction. In the Stanford study, I think the number from the U.S. was, I had it here. It was like in the 38% of respondents in the U.S. said they felt optimistic, and even less felt that the government or institutions would help to kind of, keep AI from running wild or maintaining. Whereas, around something like China, it's 84% positive, around Southeast Asia, 80% in Indonesia, et cetera. And Korea is also still pretty high. I think it was 69% optimistic. And, you can see there is more of maybe a buy-in, in Korea, say, to the government, trying to implement some sort of large-scale programs around it, whereas I think that's, there's some of that trust is not there in the U.S. I mean, we even saw it in sort of the way like COVID was handled in both countries, and that's only seems to have gotten more extreme in the U.S. Something like in the U.S., there's big protests against data centers, there's huge resistance. So, it's almost become this one of these few bipartisan issues where almost everybody is against AI in the U.S. And so you don't feel that here to the same extent, and that environment can help foster more AI development, more investment, and more adoption. So I think there is that kind of advantage already to go along with just some of the other structural things. And one example they give is Singapore has become quite advanced and quite a leader in development and adoption and attracting investment. So all of those factors are at play. But again, Korea is trying to use some of the windfall. Part of the boom of the semiconductor industry is that it's giving this big anticipated boost in tax revenue, and this Lee Jae-myung administration has been talking about finding a way to repurpose it, not just to help build out the continue to develop the ecosystem, but also to help provide just more to help sort of spread the opportunities further along, because Chien-Hao mentioned this before as well, like the chaebol industry here, we are seeing, even though AI and the semiconductor industry is having a big boom here, it is kind of tending to, just, land at the top, which is where, a lot of, that has been kind of a structural issue in South Korea in general. And, again, we're seeing that. So we are seeing, yes, Samsung and SK Hynix employees are looking to get this big bonus based on their company's profits. But, how can that spill down into the SME market is not traditionally as developed here, and youth unemployment has long been an issue here. So there is this question of startups. So I think that's where that's the challenge that's also facing South Korea as to to how to kind of help manufacturers spread the wealth, if you will, of the AI boom, outside of just this top-heavy economic structure. So it does sound like there is a plan in place. I mean, I read today actually that the Democratic Party and the government, basically agreed on the budget plan to use this additional tax revenue. So, we'll see if that can be implemented. That could be a positive step towards more healthily implementing AI in the economy.
Right, for sure, for sure. Chien-Hao, on a more personal level, this is one question I get quite often as well. How has AI affected your work as a freelance journalist from Taiwan based here in Seoul?
It has had a pretty significant impact. When I first became a journalist like 14 years ago, there were few reporters in Taiwan who could actually speak Korean. But now even journalists or editors who don't really know Koreans, who can't even speak Korean, they can use AI to translate the articles from the Korean media and make it a story. So as AI become more capable now, I've had to rethink the way I work. And I need to focus on things that AI still cannot do. For example, producing original journalism, conducting in-depth reports, and telling stories that come from real human interactions. I also believe that writing with genuine human beings, human emotion, is something AI still cannot fully replicate. And at the same time, AI has made my job much more easier in many ways. After interviews, for example, I now use AI to generate the transcripts from my recordings or videos now, which saves me a huge amount of time when I'm writing scripts or editing videos. And if I'm not sure what an interviewee, for example, who speaks the dialects, who speaks Saturi from Busan or other parts of Korea, I can even ask the AI to listen to the audio and help me to figure out what they are saying. And AI is also helpful to me when I'm reaching out to interview sources. For example, writing emails or making interview requests has never been my favorite part of the job. But now AI can give me some ideas and help me to start with how I should write or how I should call them to organize what I should talk to them. So personally, I think AI has made me more efficient and more productive recently. But in Taiwan, seeing more journalists and writers and online influencers, they are indeed using AI to write articles almost entirely from the beginning to the end. So that is a problem that quite often you can immediately recognize, or you can immediately tell that the full text is definitely generated by AI, and it tends to sound polished and full of sophisticated language, but it often lacks real substance or originally reporting or researching. I think experienced journalists or editors can still spot the difference when seeing them.
You're right indeed, right indeed. Empathy perhaps needed more in the writings, as you mentioned earlier. All right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Chien-Hao, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thomas, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, as pundits say, AI is not changing how we work, it's changing how young people get their first job. So as companies embrace the technology, the challenge is preparing the next generation for an AI-powered workplace. Thank you for watching.